Revealed, 15 spine-chilling true horror stories from Reddit's haunted, cursed threads. The wind howled outside, making the walls of Claire's home creak like an old horror film. It was the witching hour, and she felt it deep in her bones. Jake, her 8-year-old, was jumping off the walls, eyes wide with excitement, his small hands animatedly dissecting a Reddit thread he'd found about strange occurrences in their suburban neighborhood. "Mom! Did you know there's a shadow man over there?" He pointed to the dark outline of the abandoned house next door, its windows like empty eyes staring back at them. Claire chuckled nervously, but his wide-eyed enthusiasm sent a shiver down her spine. "Just stories, sweetie," she reassured him. "Nothing to fear." But as the wind rattled the window panes, the stories crept under her skin. Shadows danced on the walls like whispering phantoms, and the chill in the air heaviened, as if echoing Jake's tales. Then, there was a noise sharp, piercing. A bump against the wall jolted her heart. Gritting her teeth, she tried to dismiss it. "Just the house settling," she called out bravely, but Jake's stories looped in her mind. Tales of the shadow man who haunted empty houses, waiting in the dark. Before she could shake her head clear, her phone buzzed against the countertop, pulling her from her uneasy thoughts. The glow illuminated her face, and a flurry of notifications lit up the screen. "You won't believe what happened to me last night," one user exclaimed. Another wrote about hearing footsteps at 3 a.m., then a face peering through the window, eyes hollow and hungry. This wasn't just an isolated tale. The eeriness drummed louder as she scrolled. Even the walls felt closer, almost breathing. "You should have noticed, it's been watching you, too," warned another. Claire's heart raced. Familiar stories began tying back to Jake's fantasies. Suddenly, the house felt alive, shadowy corners pulsing with dread. "Mom, I saw him," Jake insisted, clutching his stuffed bear. "He was right outside." Claire tried to ignore the creeping panic pressing on her chest. The serenity she clung to was unraveling thread by thread. "I promise it's just your imagination," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Just then, a muted thud echoed down the dark hallway. It made her blood run cold. The shadows stretched, feeling as if they were creeping closer, suffocating her. A heavy silence filled the air, thick and palpable. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." A sudden thought clawed at her. What if the shadow man was real? She took a deep breath, her hands trembling as she grabbed an old family album for comfort. Leafing through pages, she found an article, yellowed and brittle, detailing a horrific crime from years past in their neighborhood. People had vanished without a trace. The last known location: the old house next door. Jake's terrified gaze pierced through her, and with each heavy creak of the house, the tension tightened around them. Dread pooled in her stomach, cold and unyielding. "Mom, let's lock the doors," he whispered, his voice shaking. "I will," she replied, her heart thumping fiercely. But what she heard next was worse than anything she could have imagined. A soft, almost gentle whispering from beyond the hallway. It was calling to her. As she looked back at her children, the shadows felt darker, thicker. The door to the basement creaked open slowly, revealing an abyss of darkness. A racing pulse filled the air, fear palpable as she understood the truth. Who, or what, was waiting for her to uncover? The whispering grew louder, curling around Claire's ears like smoke. It beckoned her, seductive and chilling, each syllable dripping with malice. She forced herself to step forward, clenching her fists against the rising tide of terror trying to drown her. "Jake," she called, voice shaking. "Stay close." The basement door swung wider, revealing stairs leading into an impenetrable darkness. The urge to flee fought against her maternal instinct to protect. She felt trapped between the suffocating atmosphere and the ethereal call drawing her closer. "Mom, don't!" Jake cried out, grasping her leg with his small hands, panic glimmering in his wide eyes. But his fear only pulled her deeper into the abyss of uncertainty. The shadows seemed to shift, writhing along the walls, and she could almost hear them breathing, exhaling the secrets of long-lost souls buried beneath her feet. Claire shook off the mounting dread, reaching for the old lantern that hung by the door. The flickering flame danced into life, casting trembling light against the walls. It felt like a fragile shield against the encroaching darkness. "See? Just a basement," she whispered, though her voice lacked conviction. With each step, the air grew thick, pressing against her chest. Shadows extended, twisting into grotesque forms, whispering things she couldn't quite understand. The basement seemed to pulse with an unseen presence. She hesitated at the top of the stairs, torn between stepping into the unknown and retreating to safety. Mom?" Jake's voice trembled, fear threading through every syllable. "Is it down there?" "I don't know," she replied, the truth clawing at her throat. But she had to fight for him. Had to protect him from whatever lay in the dark. "We'll find out together." Her foot descended slowly, the wood creaking ominously underneath her weight. Each step felt heavy, a countdown to something dreadful. When she reached the bottom, the beam of light illuminated cobwebs, dust, and remnants of a life once lived. Old toys lay scattered, forgotten under the relentless passage of time. A broken doll and a toy train, coated in dust like relics of ghosts. The whispering subsided, replaced by an unsettling silence. Claire peered into the dark corners, searching for answers, searching for anything. "Hello?" She called out, voice echoing off the stone walls. Nothing answered. Just the sound of her own racing heartbeat. Suddenly, a loud crash reverberated above her. Her instincts screamed to run. "Jake!" she shouted, sprinting back up the stairs. The flame flickered wildly as she ascended, shadows scampering away from the light. At the top, she found the living room door wide open, swinging ominously on its hinges. The wind battered it like an impatient spirit demanding entry. Jake stood there, frozen, pointing into the darkness of the hallway. "Mom!" "The man!" he whimpered, eyes wide with terror. That dread she had been fighting hit her like a punch in the gut. "What man?" Without waiting for an answer, Claire lunged forward. "Stay behind me." Her heart pounded as she entered the hallway, the shadows clawing against her skin. Just then, a figure slid through the darkness at the edge of her vision, slipping away like a shadow into the night. She felt it. An icy finger of fear brushed across her neck. The air turned dense, filled with something terrible lurking just beyond the light. Panic surged. "Jake, let us go." But before she could grab his hand, she heard it again, the whisper. It curled around her, deeper than before. "You're too late." The world spun as she pulled Jake to her. They bolted toward the front door, every instinct screaming for escape. But as she reached for the handle, the door slammed shut, rattling against its frame. "Mom!" Jake cried, his small voice edged with pure horror. Claire's world tilted as she turned back toward the shadows. Now alive and swirling formless shapes began to coalesce. Terrified, she knew this was just the beginning. Something ancient, something hungry was here. What would it demand from them? Would she be strong enough to protect Jake? And just as they stood backing away from the approaching dark, it whispered her name. Claire. She felt the weight of inevitability pressing on her. What had she unleashed? The shadows thickened, coiling closer, hungry and cold. Claire's instincts kicked in. "Jake, stay behind me." She could feel the oppressive weight of the darkness pushing against her, threatening to close in. "Mom, I'm scared," he cried, his voice quivering like a fragile leaf in the wind. "I know, honey. Just trust me," she said, forcing the words past her tight throat. She backed toward the door, heart racing, trying not to think of what was hidden in the blackness. But the whispers swelled again, rising like a tide. "Claire, come to me." It sounded right next to her ear, voice sweet yet laced with venom. Claire shivered, instinctively pressing Jake closer to her side. The lantern flickered, casting erratic shadows that seemed to lunge at them. "We need to find another way out," she whispered, barely loud enough to breach the deafening silence that surrounded them. The house had been their refuge. Now it felt like a trap. "Mom!" "The man!" Jake pointed, eyes wide, as a figure appeared at the far end of the hallway, a silhouette filled with malice, shifting and flowing like smoke. It stood just out of reach, the features indistinct yet malevolent. Its head tilted, as if amused by their fear. Claire swallowed hard, pulse pounding in her ears. "We have to move now." She turned, dragging Jake with her as they dashed toward the kitchen, the only place that felt somewhat safe. With each step, the coldness wrapped around them, burrowing into Claire's bones. "Mom, what is that?" Jake's voice was almost a whimper. "I don't know," she replied, panic twisting in her gut. "But we can't let it catch us." They skidded into the kitchen. Claire slammed the door shut, pressing her back against it, hoping it would hold. Heart racing, she glanced around searching for anything that could help. The kitchen was eerily quiet now, devoid of the usual comforting sounds of home. Just the faint tick of the clock hung overhead, its rhythm like a countdown. "Look!" Jake pulled at her sleeves, pointing to the window. Outside, the trees swayed violently, shadows contorting like fingers clawing at the glass. A storm was brewing, the wind howling like desperate souls. The room felt suffocating. Then came the sound, a series of heavy knocks, deliberate and persistent, from the living room. Each bang echoed with a bone-chilling finality. "Open up, Claire." The voice was dark and familiar, slithering in like smoke through the cracks of the door. She stiffened, recognizing the voice that called her name. No, it can't be him. Memories surged, a love turned twisted, something she had buried. Pain welled, threading through her heart like a thorn. "Mom?" Jake's innocent question broke her from the daze. "Who's out there?" "It's someone I thought was gone," she admitted, turning to him, shock reflecting in his clear eyes. The truth loomed larger than the figure in the hall. "Should we let him in?" The innocence in Jake's tone pierced Claire's heart. "No," she snapped, shaking her head. "We can't trust him." But the knocking continued, each thud growing more insistent. "You're hiding, Claire. Why are you hiding?" A shudder ran through her. There were secrets in this house, dark, creeping secrets. The old door shuddered against the force of the presence outside, the air thickening with fear. Her vision darted around the room. Behind her, the shadows of the corners lurked, and the whispers escalated to a frantic chorus. "Let me in, Claire." They rose to a deafening crescendo, unsettling and relentless, dragging her down into their chilling siren call, and then, in an explosion of sound, the door creaked. Claire's breath hitched. Just as she thought it might break, there was a deafening silence. "Mom!" Jake's voice quivered, breaking through the tense fog. "It's coming." Suddenly, the lights flickered, then went out, engulfing them in pure darkness. Claire felt Jake's small hand squeeze her own, warmth amidst the cold. The whispers grew louder, swirling with fury and desperation. "Open the door, Claire." The voice was no longer just an echo. It was here. As terror pulsed in the air, Claire felt an unnatural pull toward the door, a force demanding that she give in. Could she resist? In that moment, she knew a choice had to be made. Would it be survival or surrender? What horror awaited her if she chose to open that door? The darkness felt solid, wrapping around Claire like a shroud. Her heart raced, the echo of its thunderous beats drowning out the whispers clawing at her mind. She could barely breathe. "Mom, I don't want to." Jake's voice quavered, clinging to her side. "Hold on tight," she breathed, barely aware of the air escaping her trembling lips. The knocking resumed, a relentless drum against the wood, each thud sounding like a death knell. "Open the door." "I won't hurt you," the voice taunted, just outside their sanctuary. Fear spiraled through her, constricting her throat. It was all too familiar, too haunting. Memories flickered like broken glass in her mind, laughter turned to tears, joy twisted into horrific screams. "We can't let him in," Claire whispered fiercely, as if the mere act of saying it could ward him off, but the shadows beyond the door were relentless. They pushed closer, darker shapes slipping through the edges, eager to consume their light. Panic surged through Claire. "They couldn't stay here. Jake, we have to move. Now." "But where?" His small voice trembled, eyes wide with terror. "I don't know. We just need to get away." They turned together, searching the darkened kitchen for an escape. The lantern flickered weakly, its flame a dying ember, casting eerie out-of-focus outlines. The shadows in the corners tilted and twisted, reaching for them like blackened claws. Suddenly, a crashing sound erupted from the back of the house, a window shattering, shards raining down like ice. Claire's heart stopped. "The back door!" she cried, grabbing Jake's hand. They raced toward it, every step echoing with the dread of the unknown. As they stumbled, the whispers grew into a cacophony, a wild, furious storm of voices. "Come to us, stay with us," they clutched at her thoughts, dragging her closer to madness. It was too late to turn back. The back door loomed ahead, a dark threshold. Claire reached for the handle, cold metal met her hand as she twisted it. "Mom!" Jake's voice cut through her panicked haze. "What if it's him? It won't be," she hoped. She shoved the door open, and they burst into the night. Wind screamed around them, bitter and wild. Rain lashed down, a pitiless torrent, as they stumbled into the yard, desperately searching the landscape for somewhere to hide, somewhere safe. The figures. They were there, shimmering yet solid, moving through the shadows. They stood just outside the reach of their lantern light, their faces hidden but hungry eyes fixed on Claire and Jake. "Run!" she yelled, her voice swallowed by the storm as they sprinted across the lawn, each step treacherous in the mud. "You can't escape me," the menacing, familiar voice cut through the gale. Claire risked a glance over her shoulder. The figure from the hallway was closer now. It surged out of the darkness, a malevolent shadow sprinting after them, limbs extending and contracting, distorting reality itself. "Mom, it's coming!" Jake wailed, pulling at her hand. She pressed on, fear pushing her forward. They needed to get to the woods, the trees could offer some cover. But with each step, the whispers intensified, the shadows coiling tighter, the voice growing louder, more intimate. "You can't leave me, Claire. You belong to me." Claire's breath caught. The words were laced with a haunting familiarity that sent shivers down her spine. "Mom, please." Jake's voice broke as he stumbled, almost falling into the icy mud. "Hang on." She yanked him back, adrenaline surging. The darkness surged around them, a living being eager to consume. The tree line was just ahead, looming like a refuge. They could make it if only they could outpace the darkness. But a crash from behind exploded through the night, sending them both tumbling into the damp earth. Claire gasped, panic sliding through her veins like ice as she turned back. The figure loomed above them, larger than life, twisting in the storm, its face obscured yet unmistakable. The cold wind whispered her name again, now an alluring promise wrapped in danger. "This is where you truly belong." Claire's heart raced as she scrambled backward, pulling Jake close. There was nowhere left to run. Would she face him or let the darkness swallow her whole? The choice was hers to make, but at what cost? The figure towered over them, a grotesque silhouette against the storm. Claire's mind raced, images flashing before her like a broken reel. A lifetime of screams and sorrow. The familiar whispers were no longer distant, they wrapped around her like chains, pulling her deeper into despair. "Mom! What do we do?" Jake's voice was frantic. The boy's eyes glistened with fear, wet trails carving paths down his muddy cheeks. Her heart hurt for him, but primal terror pushed her to act. "Jake, listen." She gripped his shoulders, forcing him to look at her. "We need to get to the trees. They might hide us." As she turned again toward the looming tree line, the ground shook underfoot with the weight of the figure. It moved. No longer bound to the shadows, it charged towards them, its form shifting and undulating, threatening to engulf them whole. With shaking hands, Claire grabbed Jake's wrist and pulled him toward the trees. Every step felt like running through water, heavy and thick. The wind shrieked a bone-chilling chorus, but there was an undercurrent to it, her name, smooth as silk and sharp as glass. "Don't listen to it," she shouted, forcing hot air through choked lungs. "Keep moving." Branches loomed ahead, gnarled fingers stretching out, inviting them into the dense darkness. The moment they crossed into the refuge of trees, the whispers grew muffled, the storm dampened by the canopy overhead. They crouched behind a thick trunk, hearts racing in wild tandem. "What if it finds us?" Jake whispered, his voice trembling. "It won't. We'll be okay. Just stay quiet." She wished she believed it. The tightness in her chest settled like lead, the shadows pressing inward. As time crept on, the voice faded but didn't disappear. Instead, it morphed into something else, an echoing laugh that coiled up her spine. "You cannot hide from me," Claire. Every instinct screamed for her to flee deeper into the forest. But the trees seemed alive, shifting with every flutter of wind, as though they were watching, waiting. Then came a crack, sharp and loud, snapping her focus. Claire stiffened. A rustle in the underbrush gave way to a figure emerging from the darkness. It wasn't the shadow. This was different, smaller, yet full of malice. A child? No, it was a grotesque imitation, a mockery with sunken cheeks and hollow eyes. Come out," it sang, voice high-pitched and dripping with hate, its small hands caked in dirt. "We just want to play." "No. No, no, no." Claire pressed herself against the tree, heart hammering, panic coursing through her veins. Jake squeezed her hand tighter, staring wide-eyed at the creature. "Mom, what is it?" "I don't know, sweetness." "Stay close." Suddenly, the darkness around them shifted again. The shadows seemed to coalesce, swirling and taut like threads waiting to snap. And then she felt an icy sensation crawling up her legs, inching closer. "Mom!" Jake's voice trembled. "It's touching me." "Don't move. Keep still." Claire matched his gaze, desperate to conceal their fear from the creature. The child thing grinned wider, revealing a mouth full of jagged teeth. Claire swallowed hard. "What does it want?" With a sudden burst of speed, the creature lunged, and Claire reacted instinctively. She seized Jake's arm and bolted into the dark void between the trees, the echo of laughter trailing their escape. Branches snagged at her clothes, like hands reaching out to hold her back. Every step was a fight against unseen forces as the creature weaved through the trees behind them, like smoke in the angry wind. "Keep running," she yelled, feeling the darkness clutch at her heels. They were losing ground fast. Through the chaos, a muted glow flickered ahead, a distant light, pulsating with promise. Claire could feel her heart sink and soar at once. Would they find safety, or was it another trick of the night? The laughter grew louder, more frantic. Each step brought them closer, but the light was closing off, flickering uncertainly. "Mom, please," Jake pleaded, his voice thin as they raced toward the light, fighting against the grasp of the dark. Claire pushed on, the promise of escape clawing at her soul. But the moment they broke free of the tree line, things were far worse than she could imagine. The figure awaited them, grinning wide, under the soaked moonlight, wrapping itself in malevolent joy. "Did you really think you could escape?" it mocked, a storm of shadows eagerly closing in behind them. Now she stood at the brink of a choice even wider than before. What was ahead would change everything. Could she finally confront the darkness that haunted her? Or would she lose herself forever in the depths of despair? Claire's breath hitched as the figure's wide grin stretched impossibly across its face, eyes glinting with malice. It was as if the dark surrounding them deepened, a tangible weight pressing down and suffocating her thoughts. "Jake, run!" she screamed, her voice raw. Without hesitation, she turned back into the trees, dragging her son along. The laughter thrummed behind them, echoing mockery that threatened to drown out everything else. They plunged deeper into the forest, branches scratching at their skin, the air thick and unyielding. Each breath felt like a battle, the oppressive silence of the woods broken only by their ragged gasps and the relentless laughter growing closer. "Mom, I can't keep up." Jake was stumbling, his small feet slipping in the underbrush, panic flashing in his wide eyes. "Then hold on to me," she yelled, pulling him close, feeling his small form vibrate with fear against her side. The trees twisted around them, bending and warping under some unseen force, as if the woods themselves were alive and aware. Every shadow held a potential threat. The sharp snap of a twig echoed like a gunshot in the stillness. Claire's heart raced, and with each pulse, the darkness spread like ink spilled on paper. "Please, just a little further," she urged, though her mind swirled with dread. The light they had seen was lost in the thick foliage, and it felt like they were moving in circles, trapped in a nightmare that wouldn't end. Then she saw it, distant and pale. There it was again, that flickering light. It pulsed with an ethereal quality that drew her in, promising safety. "This way, quick!" Claire shouted, her voice a mixture of hope and desperation. But the laughter grew louder, echoing in her ears like a relentless chant. "You can't escape, Claire. You know that." Jake whimpered, and Claire felt the panic seep into her bones, numbing her resolve. "We need to hurry," she urged, bounding forward. As they drew closer to the light, the shadows coiled around, and she felt a burning chill wash over her. Suddenly, the ground beneath them shifted. With a sickening lurch, a hole gaped open, dark and endless, like a mouth hungry for prey. Claire gasped, pulling Jake back just in time, their legs barely halting inches from the precipice. "What is happening?" Jake cried, horror-stricken. "Stay back. We can't let it take us." Claire's mind raced. How could they overcome this? She gritted her teeth, a cold determination surging. But the figure emerged from the darkness, unmistakably buoyed by the terror it had incited. "You should have listened." Claire stepped closer, a mass of writhing shadows blending into its form, tendrils reaching out as though to ensnare them. Claire grasped Jake's hand tighter, her nails digging in. "We have to fight." She felt like she was standing on the edge of sanity, battling to retain control against the overwhelming despair. "We're going to face this together." The figure hesitated, caught off guard by her fierce defiance. The shadows flickered. And then, out of the corner of her eye, she noticed something, the distant light pulsing harder, brighter, sharper. It began to push back against the darkness, forcing it to retreat. "Jake, I think that's it. We need to get to it." With terrifying ferocity, she bolted toward the light, pulling Jake with her. The laughter turned shrill. The darkness lashed out but was met with a radiant force that illuminated the woods in blinding white. As they ran, Claire could feel the ground beneath them opening again, but now the light surged and pulsed with life, beckoning them closer even as shadows writhed in rejection. "Go!" Claire urged, using every ounce of strength. They lunged forward, each step heavier than the last, but Claire pressed on, driven by the hope of escape. "Mom!" Jake stumbled again, and before she could reach back, the shadows surged. "No!" Claire screamed, reaching out desperately, but the darkness clutched at him, pulling him away from her grasp. "Hold on, Jake. I'm coming." But as she dashed forward, a wall of shadows rose before her, blocking the light, wrapping around her like a shroud. The world spun, a tide of darkness drowning her vision, threatening to erase everything. "Mom!" Jake's voice faded, swallowed by the void. Claire thrashed against the encroaching shadows, panic clawing at her throat. She could feel the laughter all around, deafening and triumphant, a chorus of despair as the light flickered, fighting against the shadow's pull. This was no ordinary nightmare. This was a reckoning. Jake! But silence smothered her, thick and consuming. She stood on the brink, a battle waging in the dark. What choice would she make? And as the light flickered one last time, she realized she wasn't just fighting for their lives anymore. She was battling for her soul. Would the darkness claim her? Or was the light strong enough to break through? In that moment, an answer surged from deep within her. It was time to confront her fears once and for all. Can Claire find the strength to overcome the shadows gripping her heart? Or will the depths consume them both? The shadows closed in, thick and suffocating. Claire felt a tug of desperation, the encroaching darkness gnawed at her spirit. "Jake!" she screamed again, her voice splintering against the silence, raw and hoarse. But there was no answer. Just an echoing void, a cruel reminder that she might be too late. With a surge of adrenaline, she pushed against the walls of darkness wrapping around her, clawing for freedom. Each breath felt like she was inhaling despair itself. The laughter circled, a haunting melody wrapped in glee. "We're here, Claire. You think you can escape?" It taunted, resonating through the trees and swirling in her mind. The light flickered faintly in the distance, pulsing with energy that resonated with her fear and determination. She reached for it, her heart racing. Every instinct screamed to abandon hope, yet every fiber of her being knew she had to fight, had to reclaim her son from the jaws of oblivion. "Focus, Claire," she whispered to herself, desperation mixing with resolve. Her heart beat violently against her rib cage, matching the urgency of her thoughts. She needed to find Jake. She needed to break free of this nightmare. "Together," she said, her tone fierce against the overwhelming gloom, the shadows around her momentarily stalling, sensing her resolve. If she was to survive, Jake would have to as well. "I won't lose him." With that thought sparking a flame, Claire launched herself forward, breaking through the wall of darkness. The shadows recoiled slightly, as if they were alive and felt her fury radiating outwards. The trees groaned, branches twisting and trying to reach for their prey, but she was too enraged to stop. As she sprinted, the ground shifted beneath her feet, the dark maw yawning hungrily like a gaping mouth waiting for a feast. She skidded to a halt just at the cliff's edge, a macabre drop into nothingness, blacker than the night sky. "Jake!" she cried again, panic rising, choking her resolve. Then, from behind her, an icy hand alighted upon her shoulder with a shocking chill that froze her bones. Claire whipped around, adrenaline pumping fiercely, eyes wide with terror. The figure loomed behind her, its mouth curving into that grotesque grin again. "You thought you could get away?" With a swift movement that felt instinctive, Claire lunged back, dodging the figure. She had to get past it, had to reach the light before it snuffed out completely. The atmosphere crackled with the tension of an approaching storm, dark energy swirled menacingly, seeking to ensnare her, but then she remembered the light, pulsing, flickering, its ethereal glow danced just beyond the roiling shadows. Gathering every ounce of courage, she dashed to the side, maneuvering past the figure, not daring to look back. The trees bent and moaned, but the flicker grew brighter, calling to her spirit. "I'll find you!" she shouted, her voice echoing against the silence. The figure shrieked in frustration, a dissonant sound that pierced through the air, making her heart race faster. The laughter crescendoed, a frenzied, manic choir of shadows reveling in her fear. "You can't fight what's already inside you, Claire." "No!" she screamed, pushing back with every ounce of will. "That's a lie." Just as she converged upon the light, something shifted. The pull of the darkness intensified, a tidal wave of despair that threatened to sweep her away. She grasped at the light, her fingers trembling as they reached for the warmth beyond the shadows, and suddenly, there it was, a flare of warmth, of hope. But it felt far away, and the shadows surged. "You can't escape." The figures closed in, converging. But in the swirl of emotions, a voice inside her rang clear. "If you want him, Claire, let go. Let go. Did she have the strength to release her fear? In a flash, she realized that holding on was the very thing that bound her to this nightmare. The warmth beckoned her, the figures lunged, but this time, she didn't recoil. "Jake!" She cried out one last time. And at that very moment, a surge of blinding light erupted, thrusting her forward into a realm of brilliance. With a shriek that drowned out the laughter, Claire was swallowed by the light. But darkness lurked at the edges, relishing the victory it craved. What would happen to Jake? Would the echoes of terror reach him before she could bring him into the light? As the brightness enveloped her, she felt it a grip tightening on her ankle, dragging her back into the blackness. Not again the haunting silence enveloped her. Would she ever emerge from this, or was it just the beginning of an eternal nightmare? Claire's heart raced as the blinding light started to fade, replaced by the familiar pull of darkness. Her breath came in shallow gasps, panic clawed at her throat like a ravenous beast. The icy grip on her ankle tightened, dragging her down with relentless force. This wasn't over. Jake! The name erupted from her lips, the last vestige of hope in a world teetering on the edge of despair. But there came no answer, only the suffocating silence that wrapped around her like a heavy shroud. The shadows pulsated, alive and mocking. She felt their whispers crawl beneath her skin, the cold dread seeping in, telling her she was nothing but a vessel for their hunger. Yet, even as fear consumed her, a spark ignited deep within. She couldn't let this be the end. With every ounce of willpower, she kicked at the shadows holding her hostage. "Let go of me. I want to let you take him." The grip slackened, just a fraction, and Claire seized the moment. With a primal scream, she lunged forward, defying the darkness trying to drag her back into its depths. She burst through the threshold of shadow and landed hard on the ground, breathless, dizzy, but alive. Dirt and debris clouded her vision, the wild air thrummed with an otherworldly energy. She forced herself to her feet, her senses heightened. She had no idea where she was now, but she caught sight of that flickering light again, more brilliant than before, calling her. "Jake!" She yelled again, urgency coursing through her veins. Her limbs felt as heavy as lead, but she pushed through the fatigue, running towards the light. It illuminated the twisted trees, casting long, stretched shadows that danced around her. She stumbled forward, feeling them brush against her arms, icy fingers intertwining with her hair. The laughter echoed, menacing and raspy, growing closer. "That's it, Claire. You can't escape your own darkness." "No." Claire shouted, defiance swelling in her chest. "I'm not afraid of you." She snapped her gaze back to the light, it flared with intensity, offering warmth and salvation. She was so close she could almost reach out and touch it, but the shadows lurked and advanced, their malevolent presence seeping into her mind. "Why won't you just join us?" hissed a voice, slithering through her thoughts. "We can show you a world free from pain, free from loss." Her heart ached at the thought, the image of Jake flickering in her mind like the light ahead. "No. I'll fight for him." With every step, she managed to drown out the whispers. Memories of Jake flooded her mind, their laughter, the way he curled his tiny fingers around hers. She pressed on, fueled by the thought of holding him again, of rescue, of freedom. Just as she reached for the light, a sudden darkness swirled violently around her, coiling like a serpent poised to strike. More figures appeared, grotesque and twisted, taking form from the shadows, eyes filled with malice. "Foolish woman!" one growled, its voice like gravel grinding against metal. "You think you can claim the light? It's ours. You're just a lost soul." Claire's pulse thundered in her ears, but she couldn't stand still. "Jake needs me." In a moment of desperation, she embraced the light, feeling its warm tendrils wrap around her. "I want to let you have him," she declared, summoning every shred of courage she had left. The figures shrieked in pain, their forms twisting and writhing, shadows disintegrating under the brightness. But as they faded, a terrible thought flickered through her mind. What if Jake was already trapped in the same darkness, What if the shadows took him before she could save him? As the figures unraveled, Claire dove deeper into the light, stretching her fingers like tendrils towards the heart of it, where her son's laughter mixed inexplicably with the echoes of despair. And then, she heard a sound soft, familiar like a whisper carried through the wind. Mon, the hope shattered her heart, and she lunged deeper into the brightness. Jake! But just before she could touch the radiance, an unseen force clamped down on her, yanking her back. The brilliant light flickered violently as the shadows clawed out of the darkness, enveloping her once more. Welcome back, the laughter echoed, filling her with dread. She regained her footing, but dread seeped back over her senses. Would she ever find Jake? Would she ever escape? The shadows shifted, swirling ominously around her with familiar malicious intent. Time was running out. What are you willing to sacrifice to save him? A voice crooned from the deep shadows, chilling her to the bone. Claire steadied herself as she took a tentative step forward, but now the question lingered: what dark truth would she uncover next? Would she have to confront even greater horrors to save her son? The darkness shifted and twisted again, and Claire felt its sinister pull once more. It was only the beginning, and she was perilously close to unraveling everything. The shadows loomed menacingly, their voices intertwining like a malicious symphony surrounding Claire. Each whisper separately gripped her heart, tightening it in fear. Her pulse echoed in her ears, drowning out the sinister laughter that danced around her. What are you willing to sacrifice? It was the same voice, but now it carried a mocking edge, dripping with the promise of despair. As the darkness writhed, Claire braced herself for an answer she knew could change everything. I'll give up anything to save him. She shouted, the words spilling from her lips like a desperate prayer. But deep down, did she truly understand the weight of her promise? What could she give? Would it be her sanity, her own existence, or something more precious? Before she could dwell on the chilling possibilities, the ground beneath her began to tremble, fissuring like a great dark chasm. She fought to keep her balance, her gaze darting around for Jake, but all she saw were the eyes peering from the dark. They glistened with hunger, reflections of hopes long extinguished. Then, she heard it again, a faint sound cutting through the chaos, Mom, Jake. The name ripped from her throat, raw and trembling. The shadows recoiled momentarily as if her voice had struck a chord, a note of fear mingling with their hunger. But just as quick, they surged forward, drowning her in a wave of darkness. Join us! They screeched, voices overlapping in a maddening cacophony that clawed at her mind. We are one. We will grant you the power to bring him back. She shut her eyes tight, clutching her head, desperate to block them out. Power? What did that even mean? Power to save Jake, or to become another lost soul trapped in the shadows? Visions flickered in her mind, the happy moments they shared slowly twisted into horrific images of what could become of her sweet boy. A specter of Jake, disheveled and lost, haunted her thoughts, further stoking her urgency. With resolve ignited by fear, Claire opened her eyes again, and the light from her previous hope glimmered weakly in the distance. It throbbed like a heartbeat, still alive despite the encroaching dark. You're mine. You're with me, Jake. She screamed, not just into the shadows but into the void that threatened to consume every part of her. Step away from it. The voices howled, their anger bending the air around her, warping her safety. But Claire stepped forward. Each step felt heavier, but she would not retreat, and then, as if sensing her determination, they began to show her what she didn't want to see. Visions of other mothers, drawn into the same dark abyss, their pleas for their children echoing through the shadows like a ghostly dirge. Faces she did not recognize melted into the darkness, their cries becoming a part of the haunting symphony that played endlessly around her. Do you see what waits, Claire? One asked, its voice soft and sinister, filled with mockery. You could join them, all they want is company. Claire's heart thundered wildly in her chest, but her resolve hardened. I refuse. She lunged for the faint light again, every fiber of her being urged her forward. As she reached out, the darkness recoiled, as if terrified of what the light might unleash. Every step brings you closer to the truth. The shadows taunted, a blend of fear mingling with their threats. You may think you know love, but do you know loss? What will you give to learn the difference? A great tremor racked the ground, a cry of anguish echoing all around her, making her stumble backward. What if the answer lay buried beneath layers of despair? What if everything she sacrificed only led her deeper into the trap that waited for her? Claire blinked back tears. The light pulsated again, whispering promises of salvation, but the shadows held their ground, their forms coiling tighter, ready to tighten their grip. Screams echoed in the distance, a chorus of mothers mourning their children. Would she dare to join them, or could she push through this nightmare a single heartbeat of faith against an entire sea of despair, as she grappled with her choice? She felt the ground shifting beneath her again. The shadows surged forward, blocking her path. Their laughter was riotous now, drowning out her thoughts. Just as the darkness surged once more, Claire glimpsed something flickering at the edge of the light. A shape, small and shadowy, pulled at her heart, stealing her breath. "Mom, please!" The faint cry reached her, a note of pure vulnerability laced with a haunting echo. With a terrifying realization, she understood time was running out, and soon she would face the truth of her sacrifice. Would it be worth it? Would she be willing to lose herself completely to reclaim her son? A choice loomed before her, and the weight of shadows pressed around her like a vice. What lies would be uncovered if she took that leap? Desperate now, Claire pushed forward, ready to confront whatever awaited her. She needed Jake. The shadows swarmed closer as she stepped toward the light, each heartbeat drumming with uncertainty. And in that moment, a voice broke through the chaos like glass shattering. "Do you really know who he is?" It paralyzed her with dread just as she reached the light. What truth loomed ahead, lurking in the corners of her mind? The light was closer now, blinding and pure, illuminating the tangled darkness that sought to bind her. Claire felt its warmth drench her in radiant comfort, a reprieve from the cold grip of the shadows. But there was something lingering at the edge of her consciousness, an unsettling question that snaked through her thoughts like a serpent. Do you really know who he is? A chill ran up her spine. What do you mean? She shot back at the darkness, her voice quaking. But the shadows slithered, their laughter echoing like distant thunder. You think this is just about survival, about saving him? The mocking energy twisted around her, curling inwards. What if you're the danger, Claire? What if you're the reason he suffers? No. She cried, clenching her fists, pulling at the memories of her son. Jake's laughter, his radiant smile, the innocent joy in his eyes, these were her fuel, her light, but the darkness wouldn't yield easily. It thrummed with power, charging her emotions. Look inside yourself. What do you see? The truth cuts deeper than any knife. And with that, images flickered through her mind. Memories twisted and warped, muffled screams, shadows lurking behind every corner, moments of fear and anger that she had buried deep. Moments that had crept into her relationship with Jake, layering each innocent interaction with unrecognized tension. No, she exhaled, realization dawning like a distant storm cloud closing in. It can't be, this can't be about me. And yet, the shadows pressed on, relentless. You forget, Claire. We are a part of you. Your fears, your guilt, the very essence that creates the darkness around your son. Jake's voice echoed again, fragile as glass. Mom, the pain in it etched deeper into Claire's heart. I'm coming, baby. She yelled, charging toward the light as the figures surfaced, monstrous forms that wreathed around her like a storm. Then she felt it, the flicker of hope igniting. The yearning to protect. To love. Just as she reached for Jake, her heart throbbed with remembrance. A moment from long ago resurfaced, a time when she had allowed her fear to speak louder than her love. The shadows coiled tighter, less patient now, and she was almost overwhelmed by the weight of her own nightmares. Claire, the voice was soft, eerily familiar, slipping through the chaos with a chilling pull. Just let go. The darkness surged and twisted, 1,000 voices pleading and mocking in unison, but Claire would not turn back. No. She breathed, gathering every shred of willpower. I want to let fear win. She surged forward into the blinding light, reaching for Jake, heart pounding against her chest, each beat a reminder of the love that bound them strong enough to push through the shadows. That in a pulsing rush, she found herself back inside a familiar memory, the day they painted their backyard fence together, laughing and racing against time. A rush of warmth flooded her, reminding her of the light she desperately clung to. That sun-soaked happiness ignited something deep within, the belief that she was worth fighting for, and so was Jake. Fight for him. The voice from the shadows shrieked. It will cost you more than you can imagine. Claire felt a surge of determination. I know who I am. I am his mother. She bellowed, the very air vibrating with her declaration. Fear doesn't define me. I will not surrender. She lunged into the light, feeling it envelop her in an embrace, illuminating all that was precious and good. And just as she broke through, time paused. She was frozen, surrounded by a brilliant warmth, and with it, she felt the return of Jake's voice, pure, untainted mom. In that moment, everything shifted. The shadows recoiled, their grip loosening. Light erupted all around her, a force of nature that left no corner untouched. The laughter dissolved into an anguished wail, the figures behind her screaming as they dissolved into nothingness. Yet, amid the radiance, Claire felt a comforting presence. Jake was with her, their hearts beating in unison, a bond forged in love that could withstand the darkest night. Mom! I was scared. His tiny voice trembled as he stepped out from the brilliance, eyes wide but relieved. I know, sweetheart, but we're okay now. Together. Claire pulled him into her embrace, warmth flooding through her veins as they merged into the golden glow, shielding them from what once threatened to tear them apart, and the whispered promises of the shadows faded, dissolved by the light they had embraced. As they stood together, a safety blossomed around them, pushing away the dark. The forest transformed, no longer a place of fear, but a sanctuary filled with light and laughter. Darkness had no grasp here, and hope became the new song of their lives. Let us go home, Jake, Claire murmured, determination refreshing her spirit. They turned and walked away from the forest, healed, united. Together, they stepped forward into a brighter tomorrow. This was their new beginning, a choice made in love. The wind that had once howled now eased to a gentle breeze, and the storm clouds parted. With hearts intertwined, they ventured on, leaving behind the shadows forever. Now more than ever, it's clear, love always triumphs over darkness. I want you to remember this moment. And just like this story, there are more tales to uncover. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and show your support for the channel, and don't forget to flood the comment section with your thoughts and theories about this ending. I love hearing from you all. Finally, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who absolutely need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second, let us spread the word.